Well, as Russian airstrikes continue to batter Ukraine's infrastructure, European leaders and their international partners have gathered in Rome to launch a new reconstruction fund. It's the latest step in a multi-billion-euro push to help rebuild the country. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz pledged unwavering support and urged the United States to stay aligned with Europe in backing Kyiv. Merz also said Germany is planning to purchase US-made Patriot air defense systems for delivery to Ukraine. Ukraine estimates that it will need $1 trillion to repair the war damage. Kyiv is looking more than half to be made of seized Russian assets. President Volodymyr Zelensky has renewed his call for a fund like the Marshall Plan that was used to rebuild Europe after the Second World War.
And we also need a clear recovery plan. Think of the role the Marshall Plan played in rebuilding and transforming Europe. That's why Europe has enjoyed peace and economic growth for so many decades. And now we have real opportunity to spark a new wave of progress. We need a Marshall Plan-style approach, and we should develop it together.
Well, I'm joined now by Oleksandr Sushko. He's executive director of the International Renaissance Foundation, which was founded by the American billionaire investor George Soros to promote civil society in Ukraine. And Mr. Sushko joins us tonight from Rome, where that conference is taking place. It's good to have you on the program. I want to ask you about what we're seeing at this conference. The conference is launching a major support package for Ukraine's recovery, even as the war rages on. Could you explain to our viewers why that is important?
Yes, we are in the long war, unfortunately. There is no final cost of this war available. And at this moment, it matters any kind of support. And so Ukraine may survive. Ukraine demonstrates quite a significant level of resilience at all levels. However, it's clear that without the sustainable support from the international community, it will be difficult to continue as far as the war outputs are still uncertain. And so that it's not about so post-war recovery. It's about middle of the war recovery and resilience.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. When we talk about Ukraine's recovery, is it more about long-term planning for the future, or is it still fundamentally a day-to-day process of survival?
Look, it's both. I think, yes, there are lots of preoccupation about today, tomorrow, because the attacks against cities continue every day. At the same time, Ukraine has a longer-term horizon, longer-term planning. And it's not just a luxury. We need to have a longer horizon to give a perspective to people, to stay in the country, to continue working for their country, to return to the country. And so without this long-term perspective, it would be difficult to convince people how either they have future in their country. And so it's combination of very short-term and long-term perspective.
Okay. Let me ask you about what you and the International Renaissance Foundation are trying to do in Ukraine, which is strengthen civil society. How do you do that, given that Ukraine is still being attacked by Russia? I mean, most of the country remains a target, if not part of the battlefield.
Yes, we invest a lot of efforts in helping Ukrainian society to be resilient, to keep resources, to keep skilled people, to help them to be engaged and involved and build their communities. So this is a fundamental for Ukraine now. The next day after the war, there will be different situation, but also not easy. Now it is important to give people a chance, to give them support, to support the most active, those who may help themselves, give them longer perspective on all the levels, from the central capital city to the small local communities where people try to survive and demonstrate really high level of resilience.
When you talk about resilience, Mr. Sushko, how much of your work is about addressing the psychological trauma of war?
Yes, mental health and delivering on mental problems is one of the significant parts. So we invest in efforts to help people to survive mentally, to stay stable, to care about their mental conditions. So we work with different categories of people. First of all, we work for the most vulnerable people, those who the most suffered from the war. For example, the families who lost their family members in war, families who lost their houses, families who are displaced, and also war veterans, those who directly involved on the battlefield. So all these categories are important, and all them require care. So we support a number of projects across the country to help people to be strong mentally.
There is, of course, the issue of fiscal accountability when you're talking about large sums of money, particularly money that has been pledged and donated. A war zone, we know, can be fertile ground for corruption. What measures are in place to ensure transparency and to ensure that aid goes to where it's supposed to go?
Yes, our civil society is preoccupied with the accountability of any spending, especially internationally donated resources. And we support a variety of the civil society efforts to monitor how the resources available are being spent. Either there is enough of transparency and accountability. We've supported projects aimed at open data, so while the people can see online how the resources available being spent. So that's a checking and control mechanism available for everybody to see.
How would you assess support for Ukraine among Western civil societies? I mean, are we seeing signs of fatigue, or is there still political will to stick with Ukraine for as long as it takes?
There is no illusion that after 3.5 years of the war, this war, to some extent, was normalized across the world. So there is no such attention like we had 3 years ago when the war full-scale war started. At this moment, there are many other problems across the world, and certainly there is certain deficit of attention. But anyway, we have still signs. And there are enough of actors across the world, I mean both governmental and private, who are ready to contribute, ready to invest, ready to participate, ready to work together with their Ukrainian counterparts. And so this help continues. And I hope that such conferences as we have now in Rome will disclose more opportunities for Ukrainian municipalities, civil society organizations to work together and to use internationally available resources. Situation is far from perfect. Certainly there is a shortage of money, shortage of human resources, but efforts just continuing in order to fill the gap.
Okay, very good. Oleksandr Sushko, Executive Director of the International Renaissance Foundation in Ukraine. Mr. Sushko, we appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
We want to go now to that conference in Rome. I'm joined now by Valeriia Ivanova. She's a strategic advisor for Ukraine's recovery and infrastructure reforms. It's good to have you with us this evening. If we look at the numbers, 1,800 attendees coming from 77 countries. They're all discussing Ukraine's post-war reconstruction and recovery. Is there a sense of unity among all of these parties?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the question. Yes, I think it's important to highlight a few things. First of all, this year conference is very different from the first one in Lugano, or even from the ones in London or Berlin. Now we already have some experience, both in organizing recovery and in responding to the real challenges caused by the war. So Ukraine, its institutions have learned how to do fast recovery, for example, restoring water supply and after the Kakhovka dam explosion, protection energy substation, or rebuilding social infrastructure, and that experience matter. But now it's time to shift to long-term planning and develop systemic sustainable solutions. So unity only makes sense when it leads to real joint action. And today we saw a strong example of that, the creation of the new European Recovery Fund of Ukraine, announced by President von der Leyen. The EU, Germany, Italy, France, Poland, and others are joined forces. This fund is also expected to attract private investment. So, of course, many details still need to be developed, how the fund will work, what the procedures will be, and how it will be managed. But this is a very promising step. It could also become a future tool for managing, for example, frozen Russian assets, because right now Ukraine already receives support from the revenues of those frozen assets through the Ukraine facility. But the real goal should be to transfer the frozen Russian funds themselves to help rebuild and defend Ukraine. So the fact that this fund is being created, it's not just symbolic. Yeah.
Is that, excuse me for interrupting, is that something that's being discussed, though, a lot? Is taking those frozen assets and putting them to use for the people of Ukraine?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a very important question how this fund should be work, and for this we should creation a working group and other things. So yes, it's important.
You know, if we look at the numbers, Ukraine needs more than $500 billion over the next 10 years for reconstruction. And I understand the leaders in Rome have pledged 10 billion euros. Would you say that constitutes a successful outcome?
I think we need more funding for our recovery. And yes, creation of the fund, European Recovery Fund, is a very important step. But how we spend this money is just as important. Over the past 3.5 years, Ukraine's recovery system has been changing all the time, but mostly in a reactive way. And we now have many new rules, agency, and regulations, but they are not part of one coordinated system. So that is a big problem. So most major recovery projects like energy protection rebuilding after the Kakhovka dam, we launched through emergency government decision. So we should and we need to build a proper recovery system. That means a national recovery strategy to set prioritize, coordinate efforts, and give donors and business a clear plan to follow. Without it, prioritize will keep shifting and money may be wasted. A strong institutional setup. Right now we have a recovery agency, but it's only a project implementer. We need a body that can coordinate the whole recovery process, set clear rules, and make sure different actors work together. And recovery law to clearly define responsible procedures and legal rules. And right now there is still no unfight law, and that creates confusion and delays. And of course, it's about capacity building because many institution and local governments simply don't have enough staff or resources. Some people managing large recovery budget earn just a very small salary, and while donors spend money on consultants, they don't invest in making the institution stronger. That has to change. So we need a system that makes sure that money is used effectively, fairly, and with long-term impact. Tools like the Ukraine facility, public investment management reforms, and project preparation facilities can really help us, but only if we connected all key elements: its strategy, legislation, institution, and people.
Yeah.
And without that, even the best tools won't bring the result we all hope for.
Ms. Ivanova, let me ask you, if you could be in charge of this new fund, where would you spend the most money first?
We need first, we need a national recovery strategy. It's high-level priority for Ukraine. It's more important than also.
Okay. Valeriia, Ivanova, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us from Rome there at that conference for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you.